All right, we are live. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Sasquatch Out of the Shadows Live. As always, I'm your host, Alex Pedikov. I hope everyone's having a great Monday night so far. Definitely always a fun way to break up the Monday, as I always like to say. So for folks that are maybe new to the channel, this is a weekly live stream that we do every Monday night at 8 p.m. Eastern. We talk about Bigfoot, Sasquatch, all kinds of other things out there. So it'll be a lot of fun to continue on as we've been doing for such a long time. This is actually stream 67. So we're really excited for tonight's guest, and I'll get into that in a minute. If you haven't seen last week's episode, we did a kind of beyond the trail discussion with Seth and Eli and a bunch of the Small Town Monsters crew, actually. And we're kind of talking about what Beyond the Trail series is, I should say. And for folks that are new to that, that's over on the Small Town Monsters channel. Check it out. It's kind of an adventure series where we go look for Sasquatch in various parts of the country. Actually, our guest tonight will be in one of the upcoming episodes as well, which is really awesome. And actually this Thursday, so that is, what's today's date? That would be the 23rd, Thursday the 23rd, over on the Small Town Monsters channel. Bigfoot Mountain, which is about Bigfoot in the Mount Hood area in Oregon, will be coming out on the Small Town Monsters channel. It's out for squad members now. So if you want to become a Small Town Monsters squad member, it's basically becoming a channel member. You get access to a lot of the behind the scenes, some of the other shows that aren't publicly available, as well as Beyond the Trail in 4K and ad free. But if you want to check it out, like I said, this Thursday, the episode will be out. And that's going to be the fourth episode in the series so far, Beyond the Trail. We've got a lot of awesome episodes coming up. So check that out. I will throw a link to that in the description of this video. So next week, I believe we're being joined by Tate Hieronymus, who will be talking to us about his upcoming film, Uncovering the Truth About Sasquatch, I believe it's called. And maybe we'll get Tate to show a few minutes of the film. I think that'd be pretty cool. It's interviews with a lot of great researchers: James Bobo Fay, Cliff Barrickman, Daniel Perez, Connor Anderson, myself, a bunch of other cool people as well, a lot cooler than me. So you want to check it out. I've seen the film. It's pretty good. It's got some awesome stuff in it as well. So that'll be a lot of fun to talk to Tate about that. But on to this week's show. We are actually having on Chris Spencer, and Chris has been on the show a little bit last spring when we talked about a recap of going actually out to the Olympic Peninsula and hanging out with Chris and other members of the Olympic Project. So Chris is an Olympic Project member, as well as a Sasquatch researcher on his own as well. He does a lot of audio work, which I think will be really interesting. We're going to play some audio clips and talk to him about a lot of the stuff he's been involved in. So without further ado, let's bring Chris right on in. Hey man, how you doing?
Good. How are you doing, Alex?
Good. Awesome to have you on, brother.
So,
can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine.
Okay, yeah, awesome to have you on, man. Definitely been a long time coming. I've been wanting to have you on for a little bit here, and it's been great kind of talking to you behind the scenes. Obviously, whenever I have audio stuff that happens out in the field, we've been doing a lot of filming with Beyond the Trail this past summer. And when I get something weird or questionable, I like to send it your way. I definitely value your opinion as a researcher.
Right on. I don't mind looking at sound. It's always cool to get other people's recordings and comparing to my own. Once in a while, we'll have similar stuff. So that's a plus.
Oh, definitely. Also cool to kind of see different parts of the country, if there's similarities between sound. I mean, that might be indicative of something at a species, like a behavior they would have. So that's kind of cool. So yeah, definitely like that. It's awesome, obviously, hanging out with you guys out in the Olympics back in, I think it was April at this point. Feels so long ago.
Yes, it feels like more than a year ago to me.
Oh, I know. That's great.
Things have just been really busy and hectic for me. So.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I know. It's like we've done so many trips so far. It's like that was 3-4 trips ago. It's like hard to keep it all in mind. But we're starting to look at that footage now again, because the episode of Beyond the Trail that's going to be about that trip that we were hanging out with you guys will be out probably in November. That's what it's looking like now. And we talked a little bit about it on last week's show. Seth was mentioning On the Trail of Bigfoot, The Discovery, which is basically a documentary all about the Olympic Project, will be coming out as well right around that same time, so they'll kind of complement each other. Eli's actually doing the edit on the Beyond the Trail episode, but I've had a chance to see On the Trail Bigfoot the Discovery. You're in it, as well as a ton of the other members of the Olympic Project. So really, it's awesome. It looks great. It just, I think I sent you a little clip of a part that
you gave me a sneak peek.
Yeah. So. It was like all I could send on Facebook or all the memory I had on my phone. But visually, it looks great. I mean, as you know, Olympics and Washington, that area, absolutely stunning. So it was really awesome. But that's definitely going to, I think, for people that aren't aware of the Olympic Project, I think a lot of people in Sasquatch are. But for those that aren't, and maybe other people as well, it'll definitely be an eye-opener into what the Olympic Project does, and the reason why, in my opinion, you guys are at the cream of the crop, so to speak, when it comes to this kind of research.
Yeah, I'm excited to see it, because I mean, you guys filmed a lot, and I think it was like a week after you guys got back, Seth sent us a little teaser of just clips of some of the film he took, and it's just beautiful. I mean, the cinematography is just beautiful. So I'm excited to see what you guys put together.
Oh, totally. I think we had a lot of cool people there. Obviously, Seth was doing his stuff. We had Aaron, Andy Matsky with the camera, myself, and Eli. So everyone kind of has their own ways of shooting stuff. But I mean, you point a camera in any direction up there, or a drone for that matter, and you get good footage, because it's just, the setting is so incredible. And that was when the snow was still in a lot of the higher peaks. So it was quite a contrast between the kind of lush lower areas where we were hanging out. We didn't get a lot of rain, which was pretty amazing for that time of year.
Yeah. It's because I grew up here, so when people not from here come to visit and they're just in shock and awe, it reminds me of how lucky I am, because I take for granted a lot of the areas I go into, and sometimes I have to stop myself and pause and look around and say, wow, I live here. This is cool. I mean, I literally, an hour west of me is the Pacific Ocean, and less than an hour east of me, I could be in the Cascade Mountains. Most people don't get that, so I'm pretty fortunate.
I know, and it's amazing, because either one of those areas basically have some of the best Sasquatching kind of research spots, and in general terrain you can find anywhere. Obviously the Cascades, and then those coastal ranges down into Oregon and heading up to the Olympics. That's some prime habitat for sure. So kind of backtracking a little bit to get that stuff out of the way, I always like to ask my guests what got them interested into the Sasquatch topic. What kind of kicked it all off?
So I mean, like everyone says, he does this. I've always had an interest in it. First kick off, and I've talked about this on other shows. When I was a child, my parents had a cabin in Packwood, Washington, which is in the Cascades. It's really close to Mount Rainier.
Nice.
And growing up, I practically lived up there. But I remember when I was very young, I had to have been 6 or 7. And it was shortly after the In Search Of film came out, was on TV, and the Patterson Gimlin film was in it and all that. And to me, as a little kid, that was, there's Bigfoot. My dad would always say that's a monkey in a suit. But anyways, we were out cutting wood one early spring, and we'd stopped over a new clear cut, and you could see the town of Packwood. And my dad got out, and he wanted to take a picture of Packwood down below us. Well, I got out, and I've always been interested in tracks and, typical kid stuff, guy stuff, and just run around the woods. And I ran over to the side of the road, because as we were driving up, I'd seen tracks coming up the side of the road. There was a trackway. Well, they were bare footprints, and they dove off at the side of this new clear cut and just went down the hill. And it was kind of muddy. There was some slush, because there was still some kind of snow out. And I remember calling my dad over saying, Dad, look, Bigfoot prints. And I don't remember the exact details of the prints, but what really sticks out on my mind is my dad's reaction when he looked at it. His eyes just about bugged out of his head. Wow. And he's like, oh, it's probably hunter tracks. And I remember specifically saying, well, if he's a hunter, Dad, he's hunting with no shoes on. And he's like, get in the truck. And so, yeah, that I guess would be my first Bigfoot experience. But, I was a little kid. I just remember my dad's reaction, and my dad always grown up has been very skeptical. He's not now. Now that he's older, he knows what I do, and he's very interested in it. But back then, it's just very skeptical about everything. But life went on. I went to WSU, and I took my major was humanities and social sciences, which means I took history classes and anthropology classes.
Nice.
And my anthropology 101 teacher for my spring semester of my freshman year ended up being Grover Krantz.
Oh, that's amazing. Wow.
I was 19 at the time, and I wasn't following Bigfoot then. I was 19, and I remember he devoted one lecture each semester to the topic of Sasquatch. And I remember coming in that day, and on his counter, he had the Gigantopithecus skull that he had reconstructed, and there's a bunch of tracks. And I was like, what the heck? And basically he lectured about how he read tracks, and because he was a physical anthropologist, he specialized in how bone structures and how anatomically these tracks worked. And by the end of the class, I was pretty convinced that, well, there is something to Sasquatch, because here's this college professor, scientist, looking at it from a scientific perspective. And I'd never heard anyone talk from a scientific perspective before. And because that's how I am. I'm very much into the natural sciences. And
Sure.
And I was like, wow, there is actually something to this. It's not just a bunch of goofy stuff, because even back then there was a lot of supernatural, paranormal ideas going around. But
right.
So after that, I was interested, and I actually bought his book, got it signed. I bought a copy of the dermals cast that he talks about in the book, that has dermal ridges in it from him. And so I was interested.
Which one is that?
I have it right over here. It's they call it, it's in the book, Big Footprints.
Okay.
And he refers to it as the dermals cast in Big Footprints. It was one of the tracks cast by Paul Freeman in the Blue Mountains.
Okay, nice. Yeah.
And actually, if you look behind me, the fist print on the wall, they think that was the same individual that created that track, made that fist print. So that's what they think, anyways. But anyways, after that, I always had an interest, but I wasn't out looking for Sasquatch or anything. And fast forward to 2013, my son and I had gone camping, and it was a real wet year, cold year. And I'd gotten him, he was 13 years old, and I'd gotten him his own little tent. It was quote unquote a 2-man tent, but it's tiny tent. And he wanted to use it for a spring break. And we went down to the Skamania County campground off of Highway 14, right on the Columbia River. And there's maybe, 5 acres there of timber. And then you have the highway, and then you have the river. Well, at the time, there was a lot of vine maple and underbrush, so it was pretty thick in there. And we got there April 5th, and the campground had actually opened April 1st, and we were the only people there. And I'm pretty sure we were the first people to camp there.
Oh, sweet.
And we set up our tent right by the river, and then we walked up the river and found where several hundred yards down the side of the river, we found where someone had come down the sandy bank, and there's some very old degraded tracks that they're big. And my kid had jokingly said, "Oh, look, Dad, Bigfoot." And I was like, ha ha ha, yeah. And we followed them up where this thing had come down. We followed it up into the timber, and then there was a trail back in the timber that went back to where we were camped. And I noticed while we're in there, there's all these freshwater clam shells that were just opened and cleaned. They weren't chewed on, they weren't broken. And the only thing I could think of was maybe some crows or ravens had taken them back into the timber, but it was just odd where they were. They weren't right by the water where you'd expect them, where raccoons and most of the birds would crack them open right there at the water. These were taken back into the timber, and they were just open and clean. And as we got going down this trail, we kind of came around a bend, and there was a vine maple that was very freshly twist broke. and pushed behind a big fir tree, Doug fir tree, and it was about 6 feet up, 7 feet up. I mean, right about my forehead level. And underneath it, in the pine needles, was an 18 by 9 inch impression that you could see toes in it.
Wow.
And I kind of looked at it, and he looked at it, and I said, "You might have been right about those other tracks." And we were excited. We were like, "Oh, this is really cool." And I took some pictures. I have some old pictures on my phone and stuff, or actually on my camera, because back then I just had a flip phone, which I don't even think I had a camera on that phone. But we went back to camp, and we actually found several other impressions the same size, 18 by 9, in the pine needles, and then in dead leaves going off this trail. And there was areas where, as we got closer to camp, a bunch of these fir trees were probably 15 to 20 feet tall, but they were broke off at the top. Just broke off at the top. And so we were excited about it. We thought it was pretty interesting, and went back to doing what we were doing. We went fishing for a little bit. We came back and roasted some hot dogs, and it started kind of sprinkling. So I had a couple small tarps in the back of my Jeep. I took some paracord, because his little tent, he wanted to sleep in that. We were both sleeping in it. It didn't have a rain fly. So
I say to make one.
Yeah. So I put these tarps over the top of our tent, and we went to bed he went to bed about 9:30. I went to bed about 10. Well, it was after midnight, sometime after midnight. I can't remember exactly when. I woke up to movement in the campground. I mean, there was multiple something big moving around the campground, and I was wondering if maybe a herd of elk came down. Because like I said, it was a really cold year. There was still snow up at the 2,000 foot level at this time. And so I'm thinking, did it hurt? But it didn't sound like elk. It was just movement. And as I start drifting off to sleep again, something grabs those tarps and pulls on them.
Wow.
And I sat up, and, everything that we'd found was going through my head from earlier. And I just sat up and I cursed. I'm like, what the F? And, it went dead silent. Jameson woke up, and I told him it was nothing. I had a nightmare, and he went back to sleep. And I laid down, and I sat there, and I was like, did I hear was that real? Because I was in the back of my mind. I was like, what? I wasn't quite scared yet, but I was debating on what if I actually heard what I heard. And just in case, I had grabbed the fob for my Jeep Cherokee, and I was holding on to it so I could hit the panic button if something came up on the tent again. Because actually, he was by the door. I'd have to crawl over him to get out. Anyway, so I'm sitting there, and I just start drifting back off to sleep, and it happens again. And it was a big jerk. I mean, it just something jerked on the tarps, and I hit the panic button, Jeep flashing lights, horns, and all that. And after that, I did not sleep the rest of the night. And I laid there and I was scared. I was absolutely terrified. I had a 44 Magnum with me, and I could not get myself to get out of the tent. I was just waiting for something. Nothing ever approached the tent again, but ever so often I would hear movement of something large around our camp. And somewhere around, and it got to a point, dude, I actually was shaking. I was so scared at one point. And I mean, I've never been that afraid. And you build stuff up in your mind. I'm thinking about what we found, and whatever pulled on the tent is still out there moving around. And I'm telling myself, get out of the tent, you dummy. And I could not do it. I looked at my phone around a little bit after 3:30, and I'm just praying for light. I'm like, please let the sun come up. And right around 4, knock, maybe not even 50 yards behind our tent. And it sounded like a rock on a tree. And then it was silent. And I actually got out of the tent. I built the fire, and I waited for Jameson to wake up. And after that, I was like, I'm going to look into this. I'm not just going to follow this subject. I want to actively research the subject. So that's what started it.
Yeah, that's one way to get into it. Now, let me just ask you about that. I mean, did you feel at any point like I know you said you had a 44 Magnum, obviously, and I know you're in the woods. You know what you're doing. Did you feel like vulnerable at all because you had your son with you as well? Like I can imagine
But
personally that would probably make me feel like even more kind of freaked out.
yeah, and I it's I mean, you tell it to people now and they're like, well, I would have got out of the tent and this and that. And it's like,
Yeah. Okay.
and that was the thing. I was arguing with myself because it would be, and that was the other thing. It would be really quiet and I wouldn't hear anything. I'm like, get out of the tent. Whatever was out there is gone now. Just get out of the tent. And I just couldn't. And then I would hear movement again. And it's like, I had a flashlight, I had a gun. I could have gotten out of the tent, but I didn't. And I don't know what to tell you. I would hope now I would, because I've actually had enough interesting experiences that did scare me, but I never got killed. So I hope now that if something similar happened, yeah, I would get out of the tent. I hope I have my thermal with me, so I don't know what to say. I mean, it is what it is. I just stayed in the tent. I was scared. I mean, like I said, I was so scared at one point. I was shaking. I was physically shaking. I was scared.
Well,
And
it's
that was,
freaky. I mean, it's freaky being in a tent when you don't know what's outside. I mean, other animals aside, I mean, I've had moose run by my tent, and it's like, do you suddenly have the urge to just run out? Probably not. Most people wouldn't, I think, in that situation. So, especially if it's something like that seems like it's purposefully maybe messing with you or interacting with your campsite. That's not something a moose necessarily or an elk might do, at least that I'm aware of.
right. I don't think looking back now, I don't think there was anything malevolent about it. They were just, I think they were using that area for whatever reason, and we happened to be the first people in there and we were a curiosity, if anything. But I actually went back to that camp the next year and the county had cleared it all out. All that underbrush, all that vine maple was gone. So you could see everywhere. So, I mean, I pretty much gave up doing any kind of investigation around it after that. I think it was just a fluke. I was in the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I mean, it's an interesting way to get into it. Now, I do want to just say hey to everyone in the comments. There's a lot of people. There's this guy, SoCal Squatch, saying, "What's up, party people?" He also asked, "Chris Spencer been out with Todd Hale?"
That freaking troll.
Yeah, this SoCal Squatch guy, I should block him from the chat. No, just kidding. Obviously, what's up, man? And also, Rebecca Slick says, "Who's Todd Hale?" I don't know. What's up, Rebecca? Awesome to have you in the chat. We got Bigfoot Okanagan. What's going on, Leon? New Hampshire Sasquatch. Hey, everyone. Hope everyone's well. It's fine Monday evening. What's going on, man? Definitely looking forward to getting out there and squatching with you here in the fall. Peggy Curtis says, hello, Sasquatch peeps. Hey to everyone else in the chat as well. There's a lot of cool people out there, and there are some questions coming in. So we'll start questions in a little bit. But so I wanted to ask you about, kind of working with the Olympic Project. Obviously, I'm trying to figure out how to ask this question. What has been the biggest thing for you that's been surprising? I mean, was that your first time working with a Sasquatch research group, or what did you kind of expect versus, what it's actually like out there? I don't know if that question makes sense. If not, I can reword it.
Yeah. So, after my experience in 2013, I spent all of 2014 kind of researching the topic. I discovered YouTube and watched a bunch of YouTube stuff, but I discovered podcasts. I'd never even heard of a podcast before. That's how backwards I am. And a guy on Facebook had a podcast, and I'd seen his page, Dave Hallett, and does Bigfoot Ground Zero, and I joined his page, and because I listened to his show and I liked it. I think he actually had David Ellis on his show, and that's the first time I listened to David Ellis on Bigfoot Ground Zero. And me and Dave started talking because I'd made a comment about having Krantz as my teacher in college. So I actually did a show with Dave, and it was like 2014. I didn't know what I was talking about, and we became friends, and he actually introduced me to Todd and Diane Neese. And at the time, I'd heard David, and then I was also heard Shane Corson. He had another show he was doing besides Monster X, and I liked what they were talking about. I was like, I remember telling myself, man, I want to meet them. I could work with these guys. And I wanted to do specifically what David Ellis was talking about. I'm sorry, the sun is just killing me here.
Oh, that's fine.
But I really liked the idea of putting a recorder out in the woods and recording sound when no humans are around. That, I mean, let alone getting a possible unknown, but it just intrigued me. Like, that'd be kind of cool just to see what's going on out there when there's no people out there. And so I was actively in 2014 looking for a place to record in. And I did a lot of ambulance chasing, like everybody. I got on the BFRO site and chased reports. And I found out really quickly a lot of the reports on the BFRO site are not where they say they occurred. And then I just got to thinking, I was like, you know, I want to, oh, thank you. Oh boy. Yeah,
That's
Rebecca's
fine.
trying to block the sun. Anyways,
It's
it'll go
pitch-
down. It'll go down pretty quick. But
No
I
worries.
was like,
It's dark over here for me, so enjoy while you get it.
I already had kind of my ideas what I wanted to do, and there's an area near where I live that I know there's a lot of elk, and for me, it's a flesh and blood animal, and if it's out there, it's a apex predator. I'm like, well, let's go record where the animals are. So I knew an area that the elk, a large herd of elk wintered during the winter, and it was February of 2015. I started hiking in there and started recording. And it took about 2.5, 3 months, and I actually started getting some suspect stuff. And to that, I'm pretty sure me going in there, because I was going in there every weekend, sometimes multiple times a week, because the work was kind of slow that year. And so I was laid off quite a bit. So me and my friend Ryan Williams, he is an iron worker like me, we did a lot of hiking in there. And I firmly believe a lot of the time we spent in there during the day elicited some of the sound I started getting on audio in March, at the end of March. And anyways, I signed up for an OP expedition and went to the OP expedition in May of that year. And that's where I got to meet Derek in person, David in person, Shane, Cindy Cadell, Barb Olvera, just a bunch of people, very like-minded. And I just really enjoyed myself. And I guess technically that's when I became an OP member. But I didn't really start working a lot with Shane till 2017, 2018. 2017 is the first year that I was able to go into the nest site and stuff. And I also, on the side, I was also working a lot with Nathaniel Bronis. And he lives in Idaho now. And he's the one that actually got me hooked up with the long-term recording units. It was basically his idea and he showed me what he was doing, and I've taken what he was doing and I've modified it a little bit and made it work for me and stuff. So that's where I got that idea. But yeah, about 2017, I started actually doing a lot with Shane and of course Todd Hale and stuff. But I don't even remember what the question was, but there's a,
That's cool. No.
I guess I never set out to join a group or anything.
Yeah.
I found like-minded people that I enjoy spending time with in the woods, and that's what it became. So.
Oh, for sure. And yeah, I mean, great group of people. So hard to not enjoy just being out in the woods, even if something happens or not, just having fun in the woods. And like you said, if you can find a group of people that you enjoy being with, I mean, it's camping with a purpose, I suppose, enjoying the wilderness with a purpose. That's really what it ends up being, I think, in some ways. So that's awesome. I'm glad that happened. Obviously, people have been commenting, yeah, I have an OP hoodie on. Super awesome. Thank you, Shane, for that. We got a chance to film with him at the place where he saw his first Sasquatch in the Mount Hood area, and that's obviously in Bigfoot Mountain, which you have seen. So again, for folks that want to check that out, it's coming out Thursday over on Small Town Monsters, and we got some pretty interesting audio in there, and I know you had a chance to check that out. So Let's before we take a few questions, let's maybe start talking a little bit about audio. I see there were a couple questions about audio in the comment section, but if you want to start maybe kind of about what your approach with audio is and then how you analyze it afterwards, maybe.
Okay, so when I started out, I was just using a Tascam DR05, and with an extra battery pack on it, some lithium batteries, I could get 2 nights and 3 days of recording, and that's why I was going up there so much, just because I wanted to collect as much as possible. Because even back then, and it's changed over time how I do it and why I do it, but
Right.
it's pretty much the same idea. As I've always wanted to collect as much sound as possible and collect that data, and then you can put together a picture of the area, catalog every animal that you're recording, figure out every animal that's in that area, and you get a greater understanding of the area. And then when something that doesn't match anything known to the area shows up, it's a lot easier, and you can start actually putting together some patterns. But so I morphed from doing just the going out there, 2-3 times a week, putting a recorder out, and I'd put it in a stump, and I'd make it like a fern lean tube over the microphones. I went from that to the long-term unit that Nathaniel helped me develop, and that is a unit basically as it. You use a recorder that has a time record function. It's hooked up to a 12-volt battery, and I think the longest I've gotten like 26 nights one time. It all depends on weather. If it's cold out, you're not going to get as many nights, and I've gone through a lot of long-term units, and the batteries never last very long. It's always a pain in the butt trying to recharge them. And there's like a rule of three. If I had 3 long-term units set up, one would break. And either the recorder, the time record function would stop, the mics would go out, bad battery. And actually this year I said, screw it. I'm going to actually put some money into it, because I'm doing the long-term recording now in the Nest area, and I went and bought a Wildlife Acoustics SM4, which is about an $800 audio recorder, but it's what scientists actually use. And for anyone that says audio is junk, then answer me, why do scientists use these audio recorders to look for woodpeckers that have gone extinct? Because that's what they do. They use sound. They're monitoring areas and learning about what's living in areas using sound recorders, not game cameras, sound recorders. So sound is worth recording. That's what I would say to that. And they're using these SM4s, and they're awesome. I got one out in the woods right now. I mean, you could put 2 terabyte cards in it. You can record 6 months nonstop. I have mine set up to record 7 to 7 p.m. dusk till dawn, basically. And I just have 2 120 or 128 gig cards in that, and that'll do 74 nights. So that's what I'm doing with the recording side of it. And then after I get the audio, that's the tedious part, but I actually like it. You gotta like it. Everything I vet, I put it up in. I use 2 different programs, Sonic Visualizer and Audacity, and I go through my audio visually. I still listen. You got to use both your ears and your eyes when you're doing this, but the visual is what you're looking for, because I can fast forward through. In Sonic Visualizer, I can go through a 28-minute file in about 2 minutes,
which is amazing.
Yeah, and I do with the long-term units, because I'm doing a bigger files. I just plug them straight into the Spectrogram on Audacity. Audacity Spectrogram is way more detailed and way better than Sonic Visualizers, and I've actually gone to using pretty much all the time Audacity Spectrogram, and I go through, and when I see something, and it didn't come to me right away. When I first started out, I had to listen to everything, because I thought I knew every sound in the woods. I'm a 40-some-year-old man grown up in Washington State hunting and fishing my whole life, so I knew everything about the woods. Well, that was BS, because once you start actually doing this, that's when you really start learning about sounds in the woods. And my first year, I told somebody this, I recorded like 1,500 hours of audio, and I had maybe 2 to 3 minutes worth of suspect stuff on it. But that 1,500 minutes of audio that I went through, 1,500 hours that I went through, I had to listen to a lot of it just because I had to learn. I had to learn the known animals. Elk make crazy noises. Coyotes are off the hook. They make all kinds of vocalizations. And I'll tell you right now, 95% of what's on YouTube is coyote calls that are people calling Bigfoot calls. I guarantee it. Owls are another one.
Yeah.
And it takes time, but once you get to a point where you can visually see the signatures and you know what you're looking for, it goes a lot faster. But I just went off on a tangent. Sorry.
No, totally cool. I mean, I respect what you're saying. Absolutely. It's one of those things that I think audio people like to kind of ding it, it's very inaccurate, blah, blah, blah. But the simple fact of having to sift through that audio oftentimes takes it's so time consuming. So if you find ways to cut down, because I've got probably, I don't know, 15 to 20 hours of audio, maybe more, definitely more actually, from these past few trips. We've been out in Colorado and Utah and Ohio. I mean, just where we're recording every night for 3-4 hours plus 6-8 hours. And at times we'll set up before we go to sleep, and then we're recording during the day. And there's just so much to sift through. It's pretty wild. So I think the audio is a little underrated. The actual work to try to get audio is underrated, and to take it a step further, like you've done, and listen into other sounds so you can better identify things. Because I've heard things too that sound seemingly crazy that turn out to be a barred owl, or something like that. Like you said, I mean, they make some weird noises, and other animals as well, coyotes too.
Dude, I have a lot of stories where I thought I had Sasquatch and it wasn't a Sasquatch. And thankfully, the other thing is I'm not just doing this by myself. Yeah. I've got a good group of people to bounce ideas off of. Of course, David Ellis has been a huge help to me, but also Monongahela back east. He's helped me a lot in understanding how to use the spectrogram and Audacity. And when I'm stumped by something, I send him clips quite a bit in the last couple of years, just because he's been doing it a lot longer than me and he's encountered a lot more. And there's other people like Chuck Madsen in the Northern Cascades is doing the same thing I am. And what's cool is when I contact these other guys and we're all vetting stuff and we're coming up with similar sounds, species specific sounds. That's what's really cool to me. And so anyways, I just want to throw it out there. It's like, I'm actually a union iron worker. I'm not a sound expert. I just review a lot of sound, and you can take my opinion or you can leave it. I'm not going to claim anything. So.
No, and I mean, I think that's what's so interesting about people that are researchers as well, is the variety of backgrounds that you have professionally, and people, if you spent your time, your area, I'd say, if you're to go there, and you can probably identify majority of sounds that you might hear out there and, might be misidentified. So I think it's definitely important. And I think it's a discipline. I mean, it's so easy to just skim through some audio and, not really pay attention and kind of look into the details. But if you want to find the good stuff, as I found too, listening for knocks and that kind of stuff, it takes a long time. Sometimes I can even miss them with like a visualizer. So I don't know, maybe that's just some of the stuff I've got, but I haven't spent time looking at audio nearly as much as you have. So
it can be it's tedious, but in the long run, I think it's worth it. And that's the other thing is, I think you kind of pointed out, is I'm staying in the same area. I'm still the area I started in 2015. Some things have changed and I've had to move where I'm recording because of logging, but I'm still recording there. And don't worry about whether Sasquatch is there or not. If you've recorded Sasquatch in an area, odds are they're going to come back to that area at some point. And that's where you start learning stuff. And I've been fortunate enough, I've got several areas where they repeatedly come back to. And the only way I know that is because I'm recording there for years, not just 1 week here or 1 week there. I'm recording there constantly. I'm recording as much as possible to create that picture of what's going on there.
Yeah, totally. And that's, it's a good approach. I mean, you're not, unfortunately, I think some of the stuff like what I've done recently is, we're in an area for only a few nights or a night or two. So it's so tough when you get just whole
But
night of
you
audio.
make great films, Alex. You make great films. I'm glad you're doing what you're doing. You get to go all over the country. That's awesome.
Yeah, no, it's fun. I mean, and and that's what's for me is really important with them is to try and talk to folks like yourself that are like yourself that is in a certain area that you know about that area, right? You've been studying it. I'm not just going to go to one of these places and assume I know everything already, right? And I think that's the part of it is you want to like with on the trail Bigfoot the discovery as well is it's showcasing what you guys at the OP do and individually. I think that's what's so cool is what you each bring to the table in terms of what's going on. I mean, you have a lot of people. You have Cindy Dosen. All I can name names people that do specific tasks, which I think is really cool. So, yeah, the audio stuff is great. I did want to take some comments here. Sasquatch Bioacoustic says if someone claims expertise and can debunk all the potential Sasquatch audio we've captured, then they're full of crap. Not saying all audio is legit. There's a lot of misidentified stuff out there.
Yep, absolutely. I leave the door open on everything, even the stuff that for me, I'm pretty sure is our target subjects. If I get a visual on a known animal making that sound, then great. I'll be the first to tell everyone, okay, I figured out this is not a Bigfoot. And I've done that actually. In 2015, I call him Creepy Moaner Bull, but he was a bull elk and he was doing a moan from a distance. He wasn't whistling with it, and I didn't know bulls made this noise, but it sounded just like the ghost in. I think I always say it's like from the Brady Bunch. They had an episode where they had this creepy moan that would go off in the house. Well, it sounded like that, and I got that in 2015 several times in September, and 2016 rolled around, and I started getting it again, and in the back of my mind, I was thinking this has got to be related to the elk because September, late August, September, the bulls are rutting.
Yeah. Right.
And I had lots of pictures of this one bull, and I visually watched the bull make the sound. And I had people that were, good Sasquatch researchers tell me that sound's got to be a Sasquatch because I don't know what that is. That's not an elk. I've had a lot of people tell me that's not an elk. There's no way that's an elk. And then I visually watched the bull make the sound. So, yeah, I don't shut the door on anything. I'm pretty sure about most of the stuff I put out there now. But if someone comes to me and says if they have an idea what it is, I'm going to listen to them because at the end of the day, I don't want to mislead people. I want to know what I'm recording and I want to put out good information. And I get sounds all the time. There's a sound I got in the nest area right now. I know it's not Bigfoot related, but I don't know what it is, and it's driving me nuts. I'm pretty sure it's a frog, but I haven't found a frog signature that matches it. I'm leaning towards a western toad, but it's not the same signature, and that's where the visual part of looking on a spectrogram comes in because you can identify species by looking on a spectrogram when it comes to sound. So, anyways, I didn't mean.
No, that's a great transition. Actually, there was a question from Joe Turry. He asks, "Hey Alex, hey Chris, what is Chris's opinion on spectrograms? How accurate do you think they are as definitively disqualifying certain species and audio samples based on frequency range?" So that's pretty much what you're just talking about. That's awesome. Thanks, Joe.
Yeah, you can. That's where I got a good story. So in X1, my main area, I've recorded quite a few whistles and actually named the animal making them. It's Whistler, of course. And I actually tried to do my due diligence and I sent those whistles off to the Macaulay Library Sound. I sent them off to 2 different ornithologists, Macaulay Library, and I fully expected the responses, if I got a response, to be, oh, that's human, because they sound like human whistles. And that's all I wanted. I just wanted to do my due diligence. I'm like, okay, I know these aren't birds, but I want someone else to say, okay, it's human. I'm good if you say it's human. It's a human doing it in a weird place at a weird time, and it's not the same kind of whistles we usually make. So my responses were the first ornithologist got back to me really quickly, and he, bless his heart, he didn't look at it on a spectrogram. He listened to it with his ears, and he told me, oh, it's an American scooter. American scooters are sea duck. They fly in groups of thousands. And they may fly over the Cascade Range during migration, but they don't land in the Cascade Range and hang out for a week and whistle in the middle of the night. And when they do whistle, it's thousands of them whistling. But the whistle was kind of similar. So at least he responded. Macaulay
Yeah,
Library,
right.
yeah, Macaulay Library Sound never responded. The other ornithologist was a member of another group. I had to ask the other group member, what'd your ornithologist say, a year later, because I never got any response. And I just got an email back saying, oh, it's a common bird. Really? That's real scientific. Well,
Not
they
even
didn't even,
specified.
yeah. So I guess my point is that sound is important. And if you use the right tools, you use spectrograms, you can identify animals with it. And just because you have a PhD doesn't make you an expert. I'm not an expert. No one's an expert. What has to happen is consistent recording and looking at the stuff all the time. That's where the
Yeah.
expertise comes in. And I'm not saying I'm an expert, but I'm trying to learn as much as possible all the time.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah, I mean, it's like, I know recently, obviously, when we were talking about the Bluff Creek, Bigfoot at Bluff Creek, I sent you off my audio of this weird whoop thing that we had gotten that I had heard with my own ears, but apparently I was the only person in all of camp who had heard it. And that's something that's weird about Louse Camp, where if you're down in there, you have the creek. It's really loud. You can't hear much. So we happened to be far enough away, and there was people standing right near me, didn't hear it. And I thought it was Ken Gearhart, because I believe I sent you the clip, and I immediately, my reaction was that Ken, because I thought it sounded very human-like. I thought somebody was doing a whoop. Some of those guys like to do whoops, but when it comes to that one in particular, I'd love to ask you about when like I sent it off to you, you put that in a spectrogram. What's the first thing you kind of do when you have a suspect audio, or just any kind of audio?
Well, when I look at it, this is a slippery slope. Hertz ranges are important,
Yeah.
and there are specific Hertz ranges I look at, and our target subjects fall in the same Hertz range as us, except they tend to fall lower on the lower scale. And some of the Hertz ranges that some of their vocalizations are, it comes with volume too. Like when you hear something that's really, really loud, but it's really low Hertz, that's usually something bigger than a human. And I'm not, trust me, I'm not an expert. I know Monongahela is watching right now, and he probably could answer this question way better than me. But what I looked at when you sent me that vocal right away, it was under 700 Hertz, which sparked my interest in it, because a lot of the whoops that I have recorded that we believe are the target subjects are under 700 Hertz. So I was like, that's very, and then later on, I find out that you also had some knocking going around down there when that whoop occurred. That's another marker. If you've got vocalizations and percussive sounds, that's the MO for our target subjects. If it was just that vocal and you didn't have any knocking going around, I would suspect it was someone in your camp. But the fact that you also had knocking going on around your camp, that makes it even more suspicious to me. So
Yeah, and I'll play that audio. I'm just getting a little file here prepped on that, but not to talk about that. We've talked about it in previous shows, but what was so strange about it was we had this incident with the dog, Bandit, of Ron Reed's dog. He had acted in a way that Ron, who's taken the dog hiking, he's hiked the whole Appalachian Trail, seen bear, moose. He's taken him squatching before. He's acted in a way that he never had acted before. Very strange and irrational, complete tail between the legs. I've never seen a dog that disobeying their order, disobeying their owner, and just kind of acting really weird. I mean, this dog, we spent 2 weeks with him. We never had to leash him. And then we had to make a belt leash out of somebody's belt to hold him in. He was trying to duck into the woods because that was his MO when he got scared. That's what he would do when they were out hiking. And there was Jonathan Easley and some of the other guys were hearing some noises. And that was when we got back to camp, because there was a big group of us that were walking around the original site of the Cherry Crew prints. We get back into camp. I just go over to Bandit, and I happen to be filming it. And I, kind of was talking to Bandit, and I heard this whoop, and nobody else in camp heard it. I went and asked everyone, and sometimes Rowdy and some of those other guys, they'll do whoops for fun, just to kind of stir things up or freak people out. And I immediately went to inquire with everybody, and it was just a very strange occurrence. I honestly thought it was just one of people in camp, somebody in camp. So that's what kind of weird about it. But I do want to see if I can find that clip here. Oh, I have to export it. Let me just get this prepped here. I'll play that whoop, and then I'd love to play some of your audio as well. See if I can get this here. So this is the cleaned up version that you had sent me. So it was, as I was talking, that's kind of when it happened. So I'll pop it in here real quick.
He wasn't scared anymore. He wasn't scared anymore. He wasn't scared anymore. He wasn't scared anymore. He wasn't scared anymore.
So yeah, that's looped quite a few times, obviously. But it was weird. I mean, like I said, there's not really, it's hard to say one way or another. It was just, I initially thought it was just somebody at camp, because there was a lot of people at Louse Camp. That was probably the busiest night. Everybody was in there, but everybody was sitting around the fire, cooking, not paying attention, goofing off. The creek in that area where in the main area, there's the loud creek, so you can't hear anything. So we were at the edge of camp, and I guess I happened to have just gotten away enough that I was far away enough that I was able to hear something. I mean, I don't know how else to really what to say. I mean,
that happens a lot. I mean, there's a lot of times where when we go camping, I usually have a recorder. I have multiple recorders out in different directions, and when I go back and review, a lot of times there's stuff there that we didn't hear. Not always, but sometimes I pick up stuff and I'm like, how did we not hear that? I mean, because when you're in conversation with a big group of people, you're focused on that big group of people or whoever you're talking to. You're not hearing what's going on around you. And that's why when I go out, I have a recorder on top of my head all the time. And it's the minute someone, I can't remember, someone famous said it back when I first started doing this, turn it on as soon as you get out of your vehicle. And I've taken that to heart. So, and I've been lucky enough, I've recorded some things that have happened to me in person. So it's not just me telling a story. I've actually got it recorded. So,
and that's great. I mean, that's an awesome resource to be able to go back to. And, because so often in this field, it's anecdotal stories, right? It's, this is what happened to me. And it's a story someone's telling. But if you have at least something else that can corroborate it, whether it be video or audio, I mean, at least you have something else that you can refer to and say, hey, it's not just, I wasn't the only thing experiencing this. There was another device that I'm able to, it's just another piece of evidence. I think it can help layer an encounter or just the research in general. So, I mean, as we've talked about, people ding the audio, but I think it's definitely an important part of it. And I think there's a lot more audio out there than there is any kind of video or photo evidence of alleged Sasquatches. So,
yep.
Or at least that's what I think. I think in terms of,
in
terms of like what we have with presentable stuff, I think there's probably more audio out there than there is visual.
Yeah, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole with game cameras and stuff, because I do game camera work too. But
that's some cool stuff.
The audio is less intrusive. And I think our target, it's a lot easier to capture noise from something that's 100 yards away from your audio recorder that doesn't know it's there. Though I do believe in most of the areas I record, over a certain amount of time, they figure out that I'm leaving something, because I've had stuff happen right by my recorder multiple times. And but yeah, it's just less intrusive. When I put my recorders out, I'm hiding them from people. I'm not really worried about the target subjects, because inevitably, no matter how well I hide a recorder, if I'm going in and out of there on a regular basis, I get noticed, and they eventually get close to that recorder. But anyways, and
well, no, I mean, and it makes sense. I always try to think of it sort of logically in terms of a behavior standpoint. If someone just suddenly, you found a rock, on your shelf in your bedroom. You'd be like, what the heck is this doing here, right? It's something intrusive in your home that isn't supposed to be there. I imagine if something's living out in the woods, and I think this is true of other animals as well to a lesser degree. I mean, I've seen, you know, deer and other animals look directly at trail cameras that I've had out there. So they know. I think these things, if they're as smart as we believe they are, like you said, I mean, they're probably observing you at some point going in and out, and they're just able to figure it and pinpoint it. And I mean, it's humans most of the time won't, because we're not very observant in the woods generally. So I think I always try to think of it in terms of like, what would you do if somebody just brought something into your home that didn't belong there?
Yep. And I've had, it's funny when I start recording in certain areas, after a certain amount of time, almost in every situation where there's consistent activity, stuff gets thrown at my recorder. you hear stuff hit the tree and hit the ground right next to the recorder, and it's happened in the nest area. It's happened in X1. That's my main area where I started. It's happened in another area that we've been investigating for a little over a year now. Eventually, at some point, something gets thrown at the recorder, and it's like, well, 3 o'clock in the morning. Bears don't throw stuff, but out of complete silence, pow against a tree, and whatever hit the tree, you hear it hit the ground or hit the vegetation, and it's like I said, with every recorder that I've left out consistently in the same spot over a period of time, that's happened. So
yeah,
I don't know.
Well, it's just interesting. I mean, like I said, you'd imagine if you just having something in there all the time, it makes sense that you might be able to locate it. But I digress. I do want to take a couple comments here. Sasquatch Bioacoustics says spectrograms are indispensable. You can't do this kind of research without them. Yeah, I mean, especially for the sound stuff, it sounds like it's absolutely crucial. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, go to Sasquatch Bioacoustics. That's Monongahela, and learn how to use the spectrogram in Audacity.
For sure.
That's what I've done. So
that's something I'm trying to get better at. So I definitely will have to do that. But Kevin Hamilton, he says, I'm old. I thought spectrograms were women posted pictures of salads and such. Always got to throw in a good Kevin Hamilton joke every show. He's got some good stuff. But awesome. Actually, I do have a question here from our buddy Mark Marcel. He says, question, hi, Alex and Chris. While Chris was in Packwood, did he ever come across Richard Grover? He was living in the area at the time, I think. Great show as always. What's going on, Mark?
I don't remember, Mark. I mean, my parents bought the cabin in 75 and they sold it in 91 when I started college. And so, yeah, that's that time period. I was a little kid, so I don't remember that name.
Fair enough. So actually, here's Kevin again. He says, people always say Bigfoot avoids the camera, but it seems odd to me that they would do that. What concept of a photograph could Bigfoot possibly have? A little bit of a comment. Yeah, I don't know.
First, I think there have been game camera pictures.
Yeah.
And I've actually, Gerald Mills, he did some work in X1 with me, 2016 and 17. He was using a plot watcher, which doesn't require a trigger. It's just constantly taking a picture.
Yeah.
And we did get some, we got some anomalies at first light in March of some bipedals walking up out of the valley. But the problem is the plot watcher he's using is 3 megapixels.
Oh, yeah.
These people, whoever they were walking at an odd time of year, not a direction I would expect them, and they were all one color. They weren't out of the human range for height. They were around 6 foot level, but they were very thick. They were thicker than us because we did a recreation. You could see the color of our clothes when we did the recreation at the same time. A couple weeks later, at first light, you could tell we were definitely people. You could tell I had a hat on and stuff. These things were just bipedal, one solid dark black color, and they never got within 45 yards of that camera. And there was, I think, 16 or 17 frames. One of them actually stops, and it's almost like it sees that plot watcher, and they never got closer than 45 yards. They came into frame. The camera's taking pictures every 5 seconds. They came into frame at 65 yards. Now I don't know that it's Sasquatch, and I'm not going to say it was Sasquatch.
Sure.
I'm on the fence with it because the time of year is really odd. The direction they were coming from is really odd. It means they were out there in the middle of the night. They weren't wearing headlamps. They weren't using flashlights. They didn't have backpacks on. Now I've shown it to friends that are very skeptical, and they zoom in. Well, I see a hat on one, or I see color in this.
Right.
When you start zooming in on 3 megapix pictures, you're going to get distortion.
You can't, you want. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what's consistent, if you look at the picture as it is without zooming in, they're consistently black coming up out of the valley. I can't say what they are, but that's back to the camera thing. Is whatever they are, one of them looks to me like it notices the camera at 45 yards. And then they go out, it's out of frame away. I think the cameras, most people put them up on trees. Yeah, I mean, you can hide them and stuff, but what's the odds of putting it on the exact trail a Sasquatch is going to walk past and not notice it? They're astronomical. There's not as many cameras out there either that people think. And where these guys are going, they're not walking the game trails. They're off trail. They're not running the game trails like we are and stuff. That being said, I think there are game camera pictures out there. Shane Corson got something very interesting up near the nest area on his trailer. He left his camera on his trailer, and something bipedal walks past the camera really fast, and it was a lot bigger than him. You can't tell what it is because it was so close to the camera. But so, do game cameras capture stuff? Yeah, they do. But I don't think they're as good at capturing stuff as people think they should be. And I think the animals do notice them before the trigger even gets set. That's just my opinion.
No, I would agree as well. I mean, one I always think about is I think it was on Finding Bigfoot when they were in Michigan, the Upper Peninsula, Michigan. There was a deer in the right near the trail camera in the background. There was in one of the frames, there was just this figure that kind of came out from the trees, and it was so far away that it was hard to tell. But I think size-wise, they were able to see that it was around Bobo size or a little bit bigger. So some stuff like that. But even when you look at chimp or other ape research, that a lot of the trail camera stuff they get, those things, it takes them a while to get accustomed to it. It's the same thing with the researchers. They don't see these creatures until basically the apes want to reveal themselves, or they know you're a threat. They'll hear noises or they'll see movement, but nothing very direct. And so if your entire MO is basically staying elusive, as it seems to be with these things, maybe you take that ape behavior to another level. I don't know. I mean, if it's your job basically to be out there and stay alive and stay elusive, it seems to make sense to me. But again, it's just one person's opinion.
Anyways.
No, for sure. So do you want to play some of your some of the audio
sure.
I have here? Just let me know which one you'd want to play, and then we can kind of go from there. That'd be awesome.
Hey, I have there's two that are kind of related, kind of fun ones.
Sure.
I think one of them is walking into X1, September 11th, 2016. And
so 2016, you said walking. Let me see if I can
September, should be September 11th. Let me look at what I sent you.
Suspect whistle 2015. There's a September 21 ape fit.
Yeah, the other one is just the week prior to that. I want to play the other one first.
Did I maybe miss it? I might not have. I don't know if I missed it. I might have.
Well, yeah. September 11th, percussive walking in.
I maybe because I had to convert these all. I might have Yeah, I think I missed one of the files. Oh man.
Dang it, Alex. Okay. Well, here's the story. That one was a clip from a friend of mine. She's 4'11", walked into X1 with me, and we were swapping out recorders on September 11th in 2016. And on the way out, we'd heard a branch break behind us, and it was odd because it was just one branch break. And I don't know, most people have heard elk in the woods. They sound like cattle. They don't just take one step and freeze up. When they're going, they're going. So we had stopped, and I had my little scout FLIR, and I was trying to FLIR down there. And in X1, it's like, well, you saw the nest area. Well, instead of huckleberry, it's all salmonberry, and it's all 8 feet tall. You can't see 10 feet in front of you. And I'm trying to therm down in the direction. I'd stepped off the elk trail, and while I'm looking through my therm, rocks hit the tree above me. I mean, the tree that I'm standing next to, some rocks hit that tree. I sent you that clip, and Amy, you hear the rocks hit the tree, and Amy goes, "Can we leave now?" I'm like, "No." Well, we ended up leaving after we sat there for a few minutes, and then I got kind of freaked out. I couldn't see anything. And what's cool about that is 10 days after that, I record 8-fit, and 8-fit, it comes out of absolute silence. You've got.
Well, actually, I do have the September 11th clip here. If you want me to play that, I actually did export it, but here I'll play that one real quick. Then
I did amp her whispering, "Can we leave now?" because she whispered it, so I try to amp it a little bit. Go ahead and play that.
Sure, here we go.
Might have taken some handicap. But... No. Might have taken some handicap. But...
Yep.
No. Might have taken some handicap. But...
Yeah, so you can hear that the breaking right there.
Yeah, I was like, after we got up to the car, I'm like, "What do you think?" She goes, "Those were rocks." And I'm like, "Yeah." And so a week later, 10 days later, and that was the other thing I was going to say. I found in X1, there's like about a 10 to 12 day cycle. There seems, if the target subjects are making any kind of noise, and they're pretty quiet there, they don't make a lot of noise, but when they do, it's about a 10-day cycle. Well, 10 days later, 8-fit, which you're going to play next, 8-fit was on a Saturday. Friday night, the elk were in there. They're milling around my recorder. You can hear them. They make all kinds of noises. They're coughing and stomping around. Early morning, Saturday morning, they leave. The branch breaking, they just completely, they're out of the area. A storm rolls through, windy, stormy. 6 p.m. Saturday, dead silent right after a storm. Nothing. I mean, a pin drop and you could hear it. At 10:52 p.m., this happens for 30 seconds, and then it goes dead silent again for 8 hours.
Wow. All right, here we go. Wow, that's cool.
And I've put that up on Spectrogram, and those grunts look an awful lot like gorilla grunts. A lot. So, I don't know. It's that's kind of the MO for the target subjects. When they do make noise, it's bam and then quiet again. They're not repetitive. They can be. I've actually recorded some repetitive stuff, but generally speaking, and especially, and here's the other thing: every area is different. Obviously, you have different groups of animals doing different things. And though some of the stuff I record in X1 is similar to the nest area or this other area that we investigate, those groups are doing different things. In X1, they're super quiet. They do not make a lot of noise. I've recorded this year in one night. I recorded in the nest area as many vocals as would take me over a year to record an X1. They just don't make a lot of noise. So 8-fit is actually hands down one of my favorite pieces of audio, just because you've got absolute silence for hours upon hours, and then absolute silence for hours upon hours after it. That is totally the MO of our target subjects.
Right. And as Sasquatch Bioacoustic says, play it again. All right, let's do it one more time. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely.
I love that ending. You know, they ended out with a couple power
with a
knocks.
note, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what, when I get super excited when I get audio that has a vocal and percussive.
Sure.
That's when I get super excited.
As Shane says, vocals and percussive. What's up, Shane? And Central Florida Bigfoot says, sounds like bamboo hitting. Yeah, that's an interesting analogy. I mean, that's what it reminds me of too. It's kind of cool. And then Sasquatch Bioacoustic says they may be cycling through the area, coming close to a recorder once every 10 days. I have a 21 cycle at a site here in Virginia. Yeah, and I mean, as you said, it's like you'd imagine different groups of animals might have different behaviors. Maybe there's a regional component to it. I think as many pieces of the puzzles that we can get from other areas and other researchers, I think is definitely a useful tool in kind of seeing what works in one place, what doesn't in another place.
Yep, absolutely. Nathaniel Baronis, Nathaniel's one of my best friends, and I spent a lot of time in the woods with him in 2017 and 18 in this area that I'm helping him, because he's in Idaho, but he still comes out here. I'm helping him record this one particular area, and it's almost to a T every 8 days. This one we're getting, and we're pretty sure it's the same individual making noise, because he's making some really weird sounds. He or she, pretty sure it's a he, but there's in different areas they're running some kind of cycle. They're like great apes, gorillas, chimps, orangutans do the same thing. They don't overgraze an area. They're constantly on some kind of cycle, and I think our target subjects do the same thing.
Yeah, and it's something interesting. I mean, just recently, for example, we were in Colorado and we're talking to some researchers out there, and they feel strongly that the way that the Rocky Mountains are, they have, in the summer months, these things are higher elevations and, following the elk, following the animals. And then in the winter and maybe lower, warmer spots, because I was kind of talking to Eli about it. I'm like, what about in a place like Florida where it's flat and you don't have high ground? Obviously, there's going to be different behaviors and different types of prey, different things you might follow. So it's something really interesting. I think that's what's so great about talking to folks in like specific areas, kind of what the MO is in their spot.
That's a good lead up for a piece of audio. You can cue up Mr. Grumpy Pants.
Mr. Grumpy Pants. Sure. Let me, that one's not Mr. Grumpy Pants. I got it.
So
cue it up. There we go. You want me to just play it or go ahead?
Well, go ahead and play it and then I'll tell you about it.
Sure. Oh, that's a creepy one.
And so that's obviously a looped clip. My buddy Dave Hallett from Bigfoot Ground Zero cleaned that one up for me. There was an airplane flying over, of course.
Yeah.
So what you hear, the kind of the tinkling, that's not rain. It was actually snowing. And the story behind that was January of 2016. So I had spent all of 2015 in X1 with my friend Ryan Williams hiking around, and pretty much come November, it just went silent up there. Nothing was up there. Well, guess what? The elk weren't there either. And the snow level dropped down to 2,000 feet. and the snow level, the elk dropped down below the snow level. Well, my buddy Ryan, he was living on another friend of ours' property about 13 miles away as the crow flies. It's a lot further than that if you're to walk it, because you got a mountain range to go over. But they're behind a lake, and they're bordering Weyerhaeuser property, and there's an elk herd hanging out on the Weyerhaeuser property right behind my buddy's place. Well, he called me. I was working out of town, and he called me right after Thanksgiving. He was like, "Dude, I'm hearing knocks around our place." And I kind of was like, "Okay, yeah, whatever. I'll take and put a recorder out there." And so when I came home, we went out and I started recording there in December. And in like the very first recording I got, we put out, and I got a good knock, what I would consider a suspect knock. So I started recording regularly there, and that clip was January 3rd. I'd gone up. It was I'd gone up after 5, and it was already getting dark, and it just started snowing. And that recorder was placed in a marsh right across from my buddy's house. And where he'd been telling me he's been hearing all kinds of knocks around the house, and they had little kids at the time, and they had I think they had chickens, they had some animals and stuff. And I think they were kind of a curiosity, but so we're talking about lower elevations in the wintertime, closer to human habitation. Human habitation creates more food possibilities, especially in the wintertime. And that's when I recorded Mr. Grumpy Pants. That was at like 7:27 p.m. And there was quite a bit of knocking that night, but I call it Mr. Grumpy Pants because I figure it got mad about something. You get the whistles, and then you got the whatever it is stuff. So
no, definitely interesting. Hear that ooh ah, very good Sasquatch tell when you hear this in a vocal. Yeah, interesting. No, definitely. I like the one thing I appreciate about some of the files that you work on, as well as David, is you guys have very creative with the naming, which I think is awesome.
Yeah, name everything.
You're dealing with so many files, right? If you just call them sound 1, sound 2, I mean, it gets really confusing. So you got all the names. I mean, I've listened to some of the stuff that David has over the years as well, and the names, like the emails, to see attachments, and it's like really funny names, like the singer and all this kind of stuff. It's pretty cool.
I think I got another clip there. I kind of screwed up. I wanted to send you a comparison clip, but I sent you just the original clip. It's called Opera Singer.
Opera Singer. Let's see here. Oh, it's not letting me see. There's got to be a better way to do this. Let me see here. Opera vocal. Okay, is that what it is? Gotcha. Okay, let me pull that up.
So that's one of my favorites too. That's from 2018. That was August of 2018. And what's really cool about that is just recently we were on a camp out, and a guy where we were camped in the Olympics recorded almost the identical howl, long opera singer type vocal. His doesn't have a loop at the end of it. Yeah. But when you put these side by side, they are freaking really similar. And I actually, on my YouTube, I got a comparison of the two. So you have Opera Singer from X1 in 2018, and then just recently, only 3 weeks ago, Scott Burke on this camp out we were on recorded this other vocal. As soon as I heard it, he played it for me. I was like, I have that. I've recorded that. And everyone was kind of blown away at how similar they are. What's really cool about it is on that camp out, Bart Catino got a visual very briefly in his therm of a juvenile Sasquatch.
Oh, nice.
He wasn't able to record it, but he knows what he saw. And what he described was definitely, if it's the target subject, definitely a juvenile. Well, back in 2018, I recorded Opera Singer. Where I record an X1, I've always felt that I've been dealing with juveniles and possible female. In 2014, there was a juvenile sighting within a mile of where I record an X1.
Right on.
And so you've got two instances where you've got visual sightings of juvenile Sasquatch, and then you've got the same kind of vocal. So I can't say for sure that's what it is, but it's highly suspicious that these two vocals are juvenile Sasquatch vocals. So.
Yeah, that is cool. Obviously, that reminds me of the Bigfoot Mountain recordings from the Mount Hood area there, and you had a chance to listen to those as well. And that was very strange. And we talked about it on the show when I had Ron and those guys on. We were all discussing it because Ron had coincidentally been camping in the Mount Hood area and got this singing kind of noise, and then played it for Connor Anderson over at the NABC, who said that, you know, he kind of had the same reaction. I have that recording too. And he went back. It was the same time of year, July, but it was 2 years prior, within a couple miles, I think 3 to 5 miles of where that location was. And I mean, that Mount Hood area, that's not too far from where Shane had his sighting. So there's a long history in that area. So that was really cool. So that's what reminded me of. And I know we talked about that a little bit as well, which is awesome.
As far as sound, I'm trying to think of what else I sent you.
Eli says, wow, hey guys.
Hey Eli.
Hey Eli. So I have all kinds of stuff. I got well, here, let me just share my screen, and maybe you can pick which ones you'd like to play next. Here we go. So we've got all these guys here. I think we got January 5th, First Contact.
Yeah, let's play that.
Okay.
I'll give you the background on that before you play it.
Sure.
So I think that's 2018. Nathaniel Bronis had centered in on this one particular area that had a lot of sightings and possible vocalizations happening in the wintertime. So we started winter camping in this area, and it's in the Gifford Pinchon National Forest, but it's actually pretty close to some agricultural land. And so that goes with our hypothesis that in the winter months, they're coming down to lower elevations closer to human habitation. And so it was Rebecca and Nathaniel and I, and we'd made a camp, and we'd cooked like a pound of bacon and ate all this bacon, and then decided Nathaniel's big on night hikes. I'm not a big night hike fan, but he wanted to go on a night hike. So we started hiking up the logging road, which goes up to a ridge this particular ridge that he felt was a good place to be, that ran into a marsh area. Well, we get to where the logging road is on the ridge. It's 39 degrees, raining out, and pitch black. Can't see anything. I can't hardly see anything through I got a little FLIR Scout therm, and they suck. But I can't hardly see anything because it's wet out. Nathaniel decides he's going to do 3 knocks. And so I personally, I'm not into doing that, but that's what Nathaniel likes to do. So he does 3 knocks, and I actually cut those out just because there's about 3 minutes of us just standing there in complete pitch black dark. And then something happens right as Rebecca starts talking, and that's where this clip ends up. And I thought it's one of those, I wanted to play it because it's one of those instances. This is why I have a recorder going all the time when we're in the woods. I'll tell you the rest of the story after you play the clip. I'll warn you, there's a few cuss words in it.
That's fine. Let's have a listen. Yeah, awesome.
That tree made a great sound.
Oh, shit.
Here's your FLIR.
Hold on. All right, keep going. All right, so there's one here.
Yeah.
I had heard something in the brush up there, but I thought I was hearing something a little bit before that. So now I'm kind of freaked out that I was right.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Oh God, that scared the shit out of me.
Yeah, me too.
Come on. So obviously, you heard the power knock at the very beginning.
I can play that part one more time just for folks.
That tree made a great sound.
Oh, shit.
pretty loud, pretty clear.
Oh, dude, and that doesn't even do it justice. You could
No,
feel
totally.
that sucker. That thing, that was, I guarantee that was within 50 yards of us, probably
Amazing.
30 yards of us. And it's pitch black. You can't see anything. And we were just like, I mean, because you know how often we go out and absolutely nothing happens. And I was tired. We ate all that bacon, and I was just like, I was just wanted to get it over with. I was humoring Nathaniel. He wanted to do this hike and this, that. I'm like, fine, do your knocks, whatever. And I'm just kind of standing there, and that happens. And I was right awake after that. And we sat there for about 15 minutes, and he was doing some vocals that he heard in person. If you don't know Nathaniel Bronis, he had an extreme sighting of one when he was 16, and then he's had several really intense experiences out here doing this, and he's heard quite a few vocals very close to him. So he was kind of mimicking these vocals, trying to get whatever was there, because it was there. I mean, he didn't leave. Whatever was there was watching us standing in the middle of the road. And I was just doing circles with my flare. Rebecca was holding onto my Carhartt jacket, and I was just running circles in the middle of the road. Well, we'd saw some lights coming down the road about 15 minutes later, and it was a hound hunter, and he had his lights on his dog's collars. Well, he stopped just before us, and he threw all his dogs in their boxes, and he pulls up next to us, and here's us. We're standing out in pitch black dark January in the Gifford Pinchot National Forest. I got a recorder on my head, and he rolls his window down as he pulls up on us, and he's like, "Are you guys okay?" And we're like, "Yeah." Nathaniel goes, "We're doing an owl study." He's like, "Oh, okay, the spotted barred owl." And I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "Okay, I'm gonna drive down the road. I'll let my dogs out once I get down the road." And we're like, "Okay, bye." And Nathaniel was all ticked. He's like, "The guy just ruined it." And I'm like, "Just calm down. Whatever did that is still here watching all this." And after that hound hunter leaves, Nathaniel does a vocal, and it does another couple percussives. I'm pretty sure something got thrown, but that's that clip where the second response.
Second response, January 5th. Yep, let me pop that in here real quick. Yeah, that's pretty funny. That's great. I mean, that's quick thinking on his part. You know, it's owl study. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I like that. January 5th, second response. Okay.
Whoa.
Oh, there he goes. He's on the other side of the road. All right, guys, come on.
Cool.
I was like trying to catch him. If you played the whole scenario, I'm like, hold on, because he's trying to run down there, and it's pitch black, and I'm like, no, you're not going down there. We don't know. I mean, you can't see anything, and I'm like, I'm not dragging you out there. He's like, his whole thing is, wouldn't it be great to be killed by a Sasquatch? And I'm like, not if I'm with you. Go get killed by a Sasquatch when I'm not with you. So,
yeah, cool way to die, I guess. But yeah, that is crazy though. That's cool. He does that sort of funny, call, and then right away. I mean, you hear that. I'll play that one more time for folks.
Whoa.
Oh, there he goes. He's on the other side of the road. All right, guys, come on.
It's like immediately right after, a few seconds after that call.
That's just an example of why I carry a recorder on my head, because it always happens when you least expect it. I mean,
for sure.
Just nothing. And don't get me wrong. 9 times out of 10, absolutely nothing happens.
Yeah, but it's always when you least expect it. Yeah, that is it's very true. That's happened to me as well plenty of times, and it's like, come on, why wasn't the recorder on? Or of course the recorder's battery is dead. And just on Beyond the Trail alone, we've had quite a few frustrating instances of, oh, that's fine, we'll review the audio, recorder's dead. Or woken up by a knock, of course the recorder is dead.
Oh, I've been there. The worst one though is when you go out and, like with Tascams, you got to hit the button twice. I've gone out, left the Tascam out, and come back, and it's still on hold because I didn't hit the button twice. It's like That's happened too many times.
We had just on Bigfoot Mountain in the Mount Hood area, we camped in this place not too far from where those recordings were made that Ron had gotten of that singing thing and Connor Anderson. And I was woken up 5:36 in the morning by what I heard were loud knocks. And in a separate tent, Eli and his buddy Sam were woken up by what they thought were knocks or whoops. And we immediately thought, oh, yeah, we'll just check the audio after. The only audio we had were about 2 minutes, and then they decided to just, I guess the chair got moved and it wasn't on hold, so it turned itself off. I mean, plenty of times we've had that happen, but I digress. Wild. But yeah, anything else audio-wise? I know that there's a bunch more clips. I mean, I can just go down the list.
If you want to.
I've got, you tell me, man. I'll pull the screen back up. So I've put the ones that we haven't listened to are the ones up here. If you want to pick any of those ones, I think maybe we did through September 11th ones. I think we did. Yeah.
That one.
So just these guys up here.
See, is there
do you want me to pick maybe left from right? Start with the 2015
I can't
suspect whistle.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Let me pop that one in.
So what's cool is there's a vocal at the end of those. And actually, I shortened that clip up. There's about 15 minutes between the first two whistles and the last two. And the last two were actually closer to the recorder than the first two. And you hear in the last two, the vocal a lot clearer. What's cool about that vocalization is that was up in Area X1. Well, and that was October of 2015. In February of 2016, I recorded that same exact vocal down in what I call Area T1, where Mr. Grumpy Pants comes from. And so, yeah, that's what's cool about that one. And
it's cool. I mean, it just sounds like somebody whistling. It's something loud whistling, you know?
Yep.
Awesome.
And I got 2015, I got a lot of whistles. I don't think I got any whistles in 2016 or 17, but then Whistler showed back up in 2018. And I'm pretty sure it's the same animal. But he or she's whistles got a little bit deeper, as if maybe matured a little bit. And I think there's a clip too from 2018, a whistle clip from
Suspect
12.
Whistle.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll pull that one right up. 2018 Suspect Whistle. Here we go.
That was at 12:30 in the morning. So I don't know too many people that hike up in that area at 12:30 in the morning. So
yeah, that's kind of weird. Whistling. Some people can't even whistle. So here you go.
And then I think there's one 2018 long howl or suspect.
Sure. 2018 suspect howl and vocal.
Yeah. So
that is so cool.
That's the same year as Opera Singer, and that's actually that's a definite long howl, but it's higher in the hertz ranges, again higher in pitch. And in Opera Singer you have a real clear whoop. Well, this one was a little bit further away. My buddy Dave Hallett actually cleaned that clip up for me. There's a whoop at the end of that one too, so I suspect it's probably the same animal. So yeah, that's one of my favorites too.
That is pretty cool. I do want to just read this comment from Mothman46. What's up? He says, I'm currently passing the spot of the Ohio howl on my way to work. That's awesome. What are your thoughts on the Ohio howl? I'm curious about that.
That's like the gold standard. I don't know enough about audio. I usually defer to David Ellis and Monongahela when it comes to stuff like that. I don't like talking about other people's audio too much because I don't know the areas they're in. I know my areas, and I'm confident about what I'm recording in my areas, and I'm confident in ruling out the known animals in my areas, but I can't do that for other people's areas. But there's some there's some tells in that vocal that I'm learning about that I apply to my own vocals that I record, and I think it's a good one.
For sure. And that area to this day is still tons of sightings. And we were just out there. That's where Seth actually has had some stuff happen too. This property in Minerva, home of the famous Minerva case, super squatchy area, Eastern Ohio, Appalachian foothills, tons of reports over the years. I mean, it's pretty amazing area. So I had never really spent that much time there until recently. So got to see, we're not that far from where that recording happened. So it seems like a good area. So makes sense. But we've got 2 audio clips left here. We've got Close Knock, August 29th, and 2021 Chimp Fit. So which one would you like?
Let's do the Close Knock. And this one is a story I've talked about before. Me and my son, we'd walked into X1. This is August of 2015. And my son was 15 at the time. And he was really sketched out because it was a super windy day. And when we'd come down the trail, he had told me he was bumping into me. It was not his typical behavior, and he told me it was sketched out, and I was giving him a lot of crap because I'm like, it's just the wind that's making it creepy. Well, we'd gone through a marsh, and as we're going back into the timber where my recording stump is, we almost stepped on a cow elk, and she jumped up and ran downhill from us. And that's when it dawned on me, and I looked at him and said, nothing knows we're here. He goes, what? I go, the wind's in our face. She didn't smell us or hear us. And we get to my recording stump, and that's when this clip is. And right from the same direction that elk had run, there's a power knock. And the audio is not that great because it was windy, but you'll hear the knock, and then you hear my son's response. Well, after that, it happened again, and I didn't get that clip to you, but it happened again, and he had turned and went to run, and I just turned in time to grab his hoodie. I'm like, no, we're walking out of here. But we'd had multiple knocks around us, and it was definitely one of those situations I got the impression they didn't know we were there, and when they realized we were there, they weren't happy about it. But that's what you go and play this one.
Yeah, here we go.
I think it's time to go.
Could have been the wind.
Uh-huh. I think it's time to go.
Could have been the wind.
Uh-huh. I think it's time to go.
Could have been the wind.
Uh-huh.
Right on.
Yeah, he was not happy. He tried to run out of there. I had to hold on to him almost all the way out. He was like, we got to get out of here right now. And I'm like, just calm down. We're not going to run. And then, you know about Chimp Fit. It's a recent recording from the nest area. I don't know how well it's going to play. Unfortunately, the mics I had on the recorder at the time, they had a high gain. I had the sensitivity way too high. So even trying to clean it up was difficult because the sensitivity on the recorder was too high and the mics were too sensitive. So it's really loud and there's a lot of white noise behind it. But I think if you play it, I do a thing about it on my YouTube you can check out.
Let me see if I can, well, I think it should. Let's give it a try. See what happens. I mean, that is just cool. I'll play it one more time because that's just so awesome. For folks that are listening without headphones, maybe try headphones if you're listening to it. Yeah, what am I doing? Yeah, that's really cool, man. That's quite something.
Yeah, that's there's kind of the story behind it. That was May 1st of this year, and Shane Corson and Rebecca, I had gone in to service the audio, and while we were servicing the audio, I was busy. I was busy messing with stuff. Shane and Rebecca thought they were hearing voices down in the creek area, and they were looking down in that direction. I wasn't hearing anything, and I went over to my backpack, and I should have sent you that clip. I forgot. I was going to send that. I'm sorry, but I'm doing something with my recorder, and I go to say something, and right as I go to say something, they're hearing voices this direction. Well, off on this direction, a whoop, very similar to what you recorded at Louse Camp, just a single whoop. And we're like, what the heck? And we went down in the creek area where we thought we heard the voices, and we didn't find anything. It was just really odd, and it was like almost like they were looking over here. This other thing, which was a lot closer to us, does that vocal to get our attention over the other direction. I don't know if that's the case, but that's kind of what I suspect. Well, that night, that chimp fit that you just played, there's same exact vocal before chimp fit, about a minute and a half before chimp fit at 10 o'clock. The same vocal that we heard that morning, 12 hours earlier, goes off before chimp fit. So it was quite interesting.
And that blows my mind. That's only a few weeks after we would have been at the site as well. So
yeah, that's about a month after, or not even a month.
Not even a month. Yeah, like 2-3 weeks maybe. That's crazy. So for folks that aren't aware of the nest site, that's where the Olympic Project has been looking into some very interesting nests that have been found there in Washington that just kind of defy explanation. As New Hampshire Sasquatch here says, that's very interesting. If I wasn't aware of Sasquatch, I'd 100% think that was a primate. Does sound very monkey-like. I mean, very chimp-like or howler monkey-esque.
I think Sasquatch is a primate myself, but
yeah, sure.
I sent that clip to Monongahela, and he's got some examples similar to that from other states. So it's not like I'm the first person to record something like that. I feel like I struck gold. I mean, that's the type of stuff I want to get on my audio. Yeah. That's like lightning striking. You do not record stuff like that very often.
That is, yeah. I've only heard a few things even close to that. So that, and especially knowing the area, I mean, as Mikey says, that was creepy, sounded like a monkey. Yeah, I think that's kind of what New Hampshire Sasquatch meant too. If you just played that for somebody, they probably would think those are maybe just chimps or some apes going at it, right? If you'd had no Sasquatch knowledge, I know I certainly would. I'd be like, oh, nice monkey recordings. You know, what's the big deal?
Comparison. So I did a comparison with it on my YouTube. Toutle River Valley Skookum, Chris Spencer. That's my YouTube channel.
I got a link to it in the comment and the description, guys. So
if you go there, I do about a 10-minute comparison of that audio with some actual chimpanzee audio. They're not the same, and I don't expect them to be the same, but there are some really interesting similarities to the vocalizations. And what I take from it is, to me, it's definitely a primate. And I honestly, I can't think of any known animal in the Pacific Northwest that I could even vet that against. That's not owls, and that's not coyote, and it's not elk. I can't think of one animal that even comes close to vetting that against. So,
well, that's the thing. I mean, it's so distinct. I mean, if it's just a single whoop or a single whistle, you know, you could argue for the sake of, you know, skepticism. Oh, well, it could be this or that. You know, as we've heard the arguments before. But with something like that, I mean, what is the plausible explanation? I don't know. I mean, couple that with let's say some of those traditional masks that the Native Americans have of like the monkey-like faces and the baring of the teeth, or the hooting face that, you know, chimps make.
So I mean, the whistling face. I like, you know, they're like one of the tribes up here calls them the whistling woman of the woods. Rebecca always brings that up. And what's interesting is I have Kathy Strain's book, Monsters, Cannibals. Was it? Yeah, Monsters, Cannibals, and I can't think of the other. Anyways, it's Kathy Strain's book. It has literally every Native American tribe's story that has a story of Sasquatch-like creatures in it. And the tribes around my area, the Puyallups, the Yakimas, the Chinooks, they all talk about Sasquatch whistling. They all have stories about whistles. And there's some of the tribes in British Columbia and around the Olympic area, they talk about the whistling woman of the woods. Yeah. So when I hear stuff like that, and then I record whistles in the woods, it's like,
it really gets your the mind working. Yeah, the book is Giants, Cannibals, and Monsters: Bigfoot and Native Culture. So for folks that haven't heard that, actually, Kathy Strain will be coming on the show, I believe, in a couple of weeks. She's cool.
Kathy's awesome. Really nice woman. Really nice woman.
I cannot wait to have her on and to pick her brain and have her talk about all this stuff. But yeah, those sound files are pretty cool, man. It's just awesome to be able to hear some of that, and like that particular last one too from the nest site. Again, I mean, you have
right where you were at.
Yeah, and you've had primatologists, other people go in there and check out those nests. And actually, here's a question from New Hampshire Sasquatch. Yes, speaking of the nests, is there any DNA that was extracted from the nests?
I know they pulled some did an eDNA, and Meldrum still has samples in his freezer. Best ask Shane or Derek about that, but that's a really expensive procedure, and so he has samples to be tested in the future.
Definitely. It's interesting with that whole eDNA aspect, and just those nests just blow my mind. People seriously on the trail of Bigfoot, the Discovery, and beyond the trail are going to cover these areas in a way. And I'm not just saying that because we did it. I truly think they haven't really, because you hear about it in the Bigfoot community. I remember hearing about it before, but I never really had a concept of what it was like until I was there. And I hope that we're able to actually show what that looks like. And because it's mind blowing. I think it's probably some of the best Sasquatch related evidence that's come out, in the last 5 to 10 years, in my opinion.
Well, the other thing, about the nest, I was lucky enough. I got to go in there in 2017, so they weren't as degraded as they are now, and they were still really impressive. But Shane has pulled huge amounts of unknown hairs out of those nests, and that Cindy Dosen has put under a microscope, and they're primate. We just don't know what kind of primate they are. And there's been everyone's had some experiences in there. Shane and Todd walked in on a nest being built in 2020.
That's crazy. Yeah. We did an interview with them, and they showed the track. They'd had that hand track that they had found, and it's crazy.
There was tracks actually underneath where the pile of huckleberry was. There's impressions. I went in a couple weeks after it happened, and Todd had found another impression. He tried casting. It's really hard to cast in that material, though. You know what the ground was like. It's all covered in leaf litter and sticks and stuff. But I think James Millian actually found the handprint that occurred when whatever was in there that Shane and Todd spooked kind of circled around on them. So I don't want to tell their story because I wasn't there, but
no, for sure. And I'm definitely gonna have Todd on at some point to talk about that. I've had Shane on. He talked about it a little bit. And we did our recap too, that you were on last spring. We did that, but here's Todd himself. He's saying 4 footprints too. So straight from the experiencers out there. No, it's a sweet area. And I really think that, because we talk about the primate thing, right? There was a recent video that Bob Gimlin did. He's talking about, this, it's not an ape. I get those comments. So I was joking around. I said, if I got a quarter for every time I've seen or received the comment that says, oh, they're not apes, I could probably buy a nice FLIR by now. It's like, well, if you want to go to semantics, humans are apes, right?
Exactly.
So I mean, it's like you're just arguing semantics at that point, unless you think it's like an alien. Then, I mean, that's on you. But
Well, if I'm, excuse me, I have a cold, so if I lose my voice, I'm sorry. We're always my mind's always changing. I'm always thinking of hypothesis, and that's the point of a hypothesis, is to test it, and it's going to change over time. My ideas over time have changed, and they change every time I get something like chimp fit recorded.
Yeah,
it starts the wheels spinning again. But they're definitely primate. But we're recording, like, you look at ape fit that we played earlier. That's more gorilla-like.
yeah,
And then you get chimp fit, which is more chimpanzee-like. And then the long howls, that's more orangutan-like. So whatever this is, it's definitely a primate. And
yeah, and they seem to have, the ability to kind of mix and match, because we really only have known primates to reference to, which
right.
could be so far removed from whatever this thing is. Just look at us compared to chimps. I mean, we've adapted. Different types of people have adapted to all the different terrains they live in across the world. I mean, we're the most adapted primate on Earth, really. These things might be second to that. I don't know, just given the wide variety of places they're alleged to live. So interesting.
Yep.
So Kevin Hamilton has a question here. He says, RE nests, I like them as evidence, but wonder why more nests haven't been found. Could they be unique to Olympic Bigfoot, or maybe they destroy the nest when moving to a new area?
I don't know. I know in that particular area, who knows what each group is doing. The group that's moving around in the nest area are still obviously utilizing that area. We don't know how often they make those nests. We don't know if those nests were made for a specific purpose. Maybe they only do nests every 4 or 5 years, because it was almost 5 years almost 5 years when Shane and Todd walked in on this new nest being built.
Yeah.
Maybe they don't make them every year. And I'm pretty sure they don't. I mean, me and Shane and Todd hypothesize about this stuff all the time, but we have our thoughts. But I think the nests are a unique and rare big deal, because I don't think they do it all the time. I think they do it for a specific purpose, and it's not all the time. So the fact that you saw how degraded they are.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take long for something that's only built maybe every 4 or 5 years to just disappear and not be found. And where these were found, they were found by a timber surveyor. They weren't found where normal people go hiking. No. This guy was only down there because he had to be down there for his job. It is so thick, you're not going to go hiking in there. And so if they're going to take the time to build these nests, they're going to build them in areas that people are not going. That's probably the reason why more nests haven't been found around the country. But if you ask Shane and do your research, there have been nests found. I know there's nests, very similar nests made of the same material, found on Prince of Wales Island. That's in Raincoast Sasquatch, that book. And so the nests are something that are definitely not happening all the time, but I think they're probably happening more often than people think. They're just not found. They're gonna build those nests where people aren't going. And this was just like lightning striking. You had a guy come in and found them. So
yeah, no, it's really interesting. I mean, that whole idea of the nests, I think you guys have put it sort of in a spot where perhaps the nest discoveries haven't been in the past, if they were just covered in a book. And as Shane says, there have been more nests found throughout history. Check out the book Raincoast Sasquatch. There was a nest found in 1967 by Bluff Creek. Yeah, I mean, there's some stories about, one of my favorite actually reports from out here in New Hampshire is of a Sasquatch being seen in a structure made of stacked stones with hemlock branches on the top. Only report I've ever heard from out in here, and I talked to the guy at length. He wasn't sure. He didn't know what it was. This happened in the late 70s. Maybe this thing was just hanging out in some primitive shelter that somebody had built. I don't know, but it's a really weird report. But they're few and far between. But I think what you guys have done with the nests is kind of put them up in a spot where you have primatologists and other scientists and other people that are able to examine it and check it out, which I think is invaluable to the subject.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny. I hate taking questions about the nest because that's Shane's baby.
Right. No, totally.
And I don't want to. Yeah, I know what I know from Shane and Derek and David Ellis about the nest and stuff. So
No, for sure. Yeah, no, I've had Shane on obviously in the past, even way before I met him, talking about the nest. But maybe I'll have to have some of those guys on again after Discovery and those movies come out in around December, because that's going to be, I'm sure there's going to be a lot more interest at that time. That would be really cool. Tate
and Todd,
Hieronymus says Chris is awesome, Alex is not. Yeah, thanks, Tate. Can't wait to have you on the show next week. Awesome. Well, we're starting to wind down here. I know there was a couple other questions earlier about some Grover Krantz stuff, but we'll have to have you back on at some point so we can kind of talk about it. We're coming in about 2 hours now, which is pretty awesome. It does not feel that way. It feels like it's just been 10 minutes.
right on.
But yeah, man, really appreciate you coming on, sharing a lot of your audio knowledge and just sharing some of that audio too. That is super cool for people to hear. And for people listening to this after the fact, definitely recommend putting on some headphones. Or if you're going back to listen to it, might be a little easier that way. I mean, I've got headphones on. I was able to hear them perfectly on my end. So yeah. So for people wanting to kind of stay in touch or find out more about you, is your YouTube kind of the best place to look at some of your research?
I don't do a lot of social media anymore. I mean, I still have Facebook, and I get on there once in a blue moon, usually to post a link to my YouTube. But yeah, if you want to see what I'm up to, that's usually I got something up. You know, maybe once every couple months I'd put something up. But I'm actually really busy. If I'm not at my day job, I'm reviewing audio. I've got 3 different audio projects going right now. I'm like super excited, of course, about the nest area is one of them, but I'm also excited about X1 because I've got stuff happening there. Again, I basically I didn't get to record because of COVID in my main area all of 2020. So it's a relief to actually go to where I started and still be collecting data. So
yeah, definitely. So he's got some great stuff on his channel, guys. So check it out. You've also got like videos of the bear attacking your trail camera and like all that kind of stuff. So.
I think I sent you the game camera videos, but Eli filmed me placing that game camera. I was talking about I've never had a problem with bears taking my cameras, and then this bear takes the camera that I just talked about and chews it up.
So I will have to put that clip in because I do remember we were heading down the ravine and Eli's filming you setting it up, and then a few weeks or months later you sent that clip, and it's like, oh, that's perfect.
Yep. Yeah, it was funny. We were using those Sasquatch pheromone chips.
Yep.
And I'd handled one of those that day, and I'm pretty sure that's what attracted the bear to the camera, because I've actually, that particular model of camera, I've never had an issue, and I've got a whole bunch of pictures of a bear walking past those type of cameras repeatedly over the last last 6 months, and never even looking at the camera. But that bear smelled that camera and wanted it. So.
Yeah, definitely. No, those pheromone chips, they're quite something. We've been using them now pretty much since that trip to the Olympics. We've been using them on the Beyond the Trail stuff, and I don't know if we've had success, but they're bad. They're
wear rubber gloves and don't touch anything you don't want a bear to eat when you handle them.
Oh yeah, we've had to disinfect my hands as soon as I get done with it. When I was traveling with it out to California, I had to put the jar of the pheromone chip inside of an ice cream jar and then double bag it because I didn't want to be a bioterrorist with pheromones coming out of my suitcase.
Yeah.
But awesome. Well, thank you, Peggy, for that super chat. And just want to say thanks to everyone in the comments. Kevin Hamilton says that was really interesting. Chris is a wealth of info regarding the audio stuff. Good stuff. Judy Wheeler says, thank you for good information. Peggy says, could listen for another 2 hours. Fascinating show. Thank you. Estelle Harrington says, I'm late, so I'll have to listen to it all over again. Awesome. Yeah, definitely put on some headphones for that audio. So, and Mikey Z-Man says, thank you guys. It's great to hear some of the audio you've captured, Chris.
Thanks, awesome. Guys. Thank you. I and everything I know I've learned from other good people, and anybody can do this if they have the passion for it. Anybody can. So I just wanted to add that.
Rebecca here says, don't forget about them in your backpack for a week. I may have done that. The pheromone chips. That doesn't sound good.
No, it does not smell good.
Teflon 66 says, great show, guys. Thanks. Awesome. Yeah, guys. Well, be sure to check out Chris in His channel is linked in the description of this video. And again, just a reminder, Beyond the Trail and On the Trail of Bigfoot, the Discovery will be coming out in November, December, around that time period, which will feature the whole Olympic project. Chris is in both of those films, and definitely in Beyond the Trail, we were spending a lot of time with Chris and Rebecca and Shane and Todd in the nest site. So I'm super excited to see how that all turns out. I think it's going to show these areas and what these folks do in a way that it hasn't been shown before. So super awesome. New Hampshire Sasquatch as well says awesome show, super informative, great show, guys. Thank you. So as again, guys, reminder, next week we'll be having on Tate Hieronymus. But aside from that, this Thursday, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, Beyond the Trail, Bigfoot Mountain about Oregon is coming out. It has Shane Corson's encounter. He actually took us to the spot where he had the encounter, which is super awesome. And another announcement, I will be actually releasing my film Lions of the East on September 30th. It's going to be coming out on YouTube. I've been sitting on it for a while, and I decided to release the whole documentary on YouTube. So I'll be talking more about that on next week's show. But for now, thank you, everyone, as always, for your awesome comments and questions. And thank you, Chris, for coming on, man. It's been a pleasure to have you on.
No problem, man.
All right, everybody. Have a great rest of your week, folks, and we'll see you guys next Monday. Take it easy.